The first time I realized my sister had been planning to erase me from my grandmother's estate, I was standing in my own kitchen holding a casserole dish I had made for her engagement dinner, while she was in the next room telling 22 people that I had never really cared about family property anyway. She said it lightly, like a joke, like a harmless little story meant to make everyone laugh before dessert, but the room had gone quiet in that very specific way. Family rooms go quiet when everybody knows something ugly is being said and nobody wants to be the first person to admit they heard it clearly. My name is Claire Bennett, and I was 37 years old when my younger sister tried to steal the lake house our grandmother had promised me, then made the mistake of doing it in a family full of people who thought I was too polite to fight back. I'm a contracts manager in Minneapolis. I spend my days reviewing language other people skim past, finding the sentence hidden in paragraph 12 that changes everything, and making sure nobody signs something they don't understand. It's not glamorous work, but it teaches you two things very quickly. First, people lie most confidently when they assume nobody is reading closely. And second, the person who stays quiet in a room is usually learning more than the person who keeps talking. My grandmother, June Bennett, understood that instinct better than anyone. She bought the lake house in northern Minnesota in 1986 after my grandfather died. It wasn't huge and it wasn't fancy, but it sat on a perfect strip of water with pine trees behind it and a dock that creaked when you stepped on the third plank from the end. Every summer of my childhood happened there. Every scraped knee, every burnt marshmallow, every card game, every storm watched from the screen porch. It was the only place in our family that felt uncomplicated. My sister Melanie never loved the house the way I did. She loved what it represented: attention, status. A pretty story she could tell people about our family lake place without ever mentioning that she hadn't spent a full weekend there in almost 9 years. I was the one who went up when Grandma's arthritis got bad and she needed help opening the cabin for spring. I was the one who sat at the scarred kitchen table paying her property taxes online because she hated computers. I was the one who drove her to medical appointments, fixed the leak under the bathroom sink, and spent 3 straight Saturdays helping her inventory old jewelry because she wanted everything labeled before she died. Melanie posted photos there twice a year and called it sentiment. Grandma knew the difference. 3 years before she died, she told me very plainly that the lake house would be mine. Not because I was older, not because she loved me more, because, as she put it, "You're the only one who treats this place like a home instead of a backdrop." I laughed when she said it, but she didn't. Grandma wasn't dramatic. She was the kind of woman who folded grocery bags neatly, balanced her checkbook to the penny, and believed people revealed their character fastest when money and grief entered the same room. When she told me the house would be mine, she did it while labeling freezer containers with a black marker and didn't even look up from the counter. "Your mother will hate it," she said. "Melanie too." "Yes," Grandma replied. "That's because both of them think wanting something badly is the same as earning it." She died the following February, quietly, at home, and for about 6 days, everyone in the family behaved exactly the way decent people are supposed to behave after a loss. There were casseroles, soft voices, church flowers, and long, sad hugs in cold driveways. Then the paperwork started. My mother began saying strange little things like, "Well, we'll see what June decided in the end," in that careful tone people use when they're pretending not to campaign. Melanie started asking oddly specific questions about the dock permit, the cabin insurance, and whether Grandma had ever talked about dividing the property value fairly between both daughters' families. Both daughters' families. That phrase told me everything. Melanie didn't want the lake house because she loved it. She wanted it because she and her fiancé had just put an offer on a house they couldn't comfortably afford, and she had started treating every family asset like an emergency funding source. The will reading was scheduled for the following Friday at my grandmother's attorney's office in Duluth. By Wednesday, Melanie had somehow already told half the family she was pretty sure Grandma intended the house to stay available to everyone, which is a lovely sentence if you don't know. It really means, "I'm laying groundwork in case I don't get what I want." The reading itself was short: a few cash gifts, jewelry, a donation to the church choir, and then the house. The attorney read the line once clearly and then again when my mother interrupted him. The lake house, along with all furnishings, maintenance accounts, and adjoining lot rights, had been left solely to me. Not jointly, not in trust, not with a family use schedule. Mine. Melanie smiled when she heard it. That was the first sign I should have been worried, because it wasn't a hurt smile. It was a calculating one, like she had already moved on to step 2. The engagement dinner happened 10 days later at my mother's house. Melanie insisted on hosting because, in her words, the family needed something happy. What she actually needed was an audience. Halfway through dinner, after the chicken had been served and everyone was on their second glass of wine, my uncle asked casually what I planned to do with the lake house. Before I could answer, Melanie laughed and said, "Claire will probably sell it to me once probate clears. She knows I'm the one starting a family, and honestly, she's never really cared about keeping property in the family the way I do." That was the moment the room went still, because everyone at that table knew it was a lie. They knew who had been driving Grandma to appointments. They knew who kept the keys. They knew who spent every Memorial Day weekend scrubbing the porch furniture and airing out the guest rooms. They knew, but family lies have a funny way of hanging in the air if the liar says them confidently enough. I set down my fork and looked at my sister. "No," I said, "just that. No explanation, no speech, no smile." She blinked. "What?" "I'm not selling you the house." Her fiancé shifted in his chair. My mother jumped in immediately. "Oh, honey, nobody's asking you to decide tonight." "Yes, she is," I said, still looking at Melanie. "That's why she said it in front of everyone before ever speaking to me privately." Melanie laughed, but it sounded thinner now. "Claire, don't be dramatic. I'm just saying it would make sense. You live 3 hours away. We'd actually use it." I almost admired the nerve. "Use it for what?" I asked. "Weekend photos? Or as collateral once your mortgage starts squeezing?" Her face changed, only for a second, but I saw it. So did my uncle. So did my mother. Melanie sat up straighter. "That's a disgusting thing to say." "No," I said calmly. "What's disgusting is telling people I agreed to sell you something I inherited 10 days ago." My mother tried to smooth it over, of course. She always did. She said emotions were high, that everyone was grieving, that Melanie was only excited about building traditions for her future children. Then I made the mistake of mentioning the letter. My grandmother had left me a handwritten note with the will documents. I hadn't told anyone because it felt private, but the second my mother started talking about what June would have wanted, I knew I was done protecting everybody else's comfort. So I took the folded paper out of my bag and read one line. Just one. "Claire knows the difference between loving a place and wanting to own it because it looks good in photographs." Melanie went white. My mother looked like I had slapped her. And then my aunt, the quiet one who almost never got involved in anything, started laughing so hard she had to put her napkin over her mouth. That broke the room. My uncle looked down at his plate, smiling. My cousin choked on his wine. Even Melanie's fiancé suddenly found the tablecloth fascinating, because once the truth is spoken out loud, the lie has nowhere elegant to stand. Melanie started crying, real tears too, which almost impressed me. She said I was humiliating her, that I had always resented her, that Grandma had manipulated the situation by playing favorites. My mother took her side instantly and said I was being cruel on purpose, that I could at least offer Melanie a share if I really loved my family. That was when I finally understood what they had been counting on all along. Not law, not fairness, guilt. They thought if they made me look selfish enough, I would hand over part of the house just to stop the room from feeling uncomfortable. They forgot what I do for a living. I reached into my bag one more time and pulled out a printed copy of the cabin expense ledger from the last 6 years. Property taxes paid by me on Grandma's behalf, dock repairs arranged by me, insurance renewals handled by me, heating service appointments scheduled by me, emergency plumbing bill covered by me and reimbursed months later by Grandma because she insisted. I slid the packet across the table. "If anyone here would like to discuss who actually maintained that house," I said, "I'm happy to keep going." Nobody did, not one person. My mother looked furious. Melanie looked stunned. And for the first time in my life, I watched my sister realize that being louder was not the same thing as being right. I left right after dessert. I drove home with the windows cracked even though it was cold, because my whole body felt overheated with the kind of anger that only comes after you've spent years being the reasonable daughter and suddenly decide you're done donating your silence to people who would never do the same for you. Melanie didn't speak to me for 3 months. My mother barely did either. Then summer came, and with it, reality. The house Melanie and her fiancé bought needed more work than expected. Money got tight. Wedding costs grew. And one Tuesday afternoon, I got a text from her that simply said, "If I offered to buy just half the lake house, would you consider it?" I stared at that message for a full minute before replying. "No, but I will offer you something else." What I offered was 1 fixed week every July for family use, provided dates were arranged in advance, no one sublet the property, and nobody treated the place like a short-term rental with sentimental branding. It was generous, more generous than I had to be, but Grandma was right about one thing. There's a difference between punishment and boundaries, and if you don't know where that line is, family damage can become its own inheritance. Melanie accepted. Not graciously, but she accepted. The lake house is still mine. I kept the old dock. I repainted the porch swing. I framed Grandma's handwritten note and hung it in the hallway outside the kitchen where only family sees it. Every fall I still drive up for closing weekend, drain the pipes, cover the patio furniture, and stand at the edge of the water for a minute before I leave. It doesn't feel like winning exactly. It feels like stewardship, which is probably the only kind of inheritance worth keeping. My mother and I speak now, though carefully. Melanie and I are civil in the way women become civil when one of them finally understands the other is no longer available for emotional theft. Her marriage survived. Mine never existed, which in my family used to be considered a tragedy, and now mostly seems to confuse them because I look happier than I'm supposed to. And every once in a while, when I unlock the lake house after a long winter and smell cedar, old books, and cold Minnesota air, I hear Grandma's voice in my head as clearly as if she were still standing by the freezer with that black marker in her hand. Wanting something badly is not the same as earning it. If you made it this far, tell me where you're listening from. And if your family has ever tried to turn your kindness into an opening bid, I hope you learned sooner than I did that peace bought with surrender is usually just another bill coming due. Take care of yourself, protect what's yours, and if you want more stories about family, inheritance, quiet revenge, and the receipts people wish had been lost, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Some people think the quiet daughter won't fight back. They only think that until she starts reading from the paperwork.